Okay, welcome back. Congratulations for getting through all of those AI videos if you watched all 4 of them. Bravo. I hope you learned something and are not more confused than when you started. So what we're going to do now is we're going to kind of transition back to working on our heads-up display. So where we've left it to date is, we have our HUD and we've got a score text box, and then we've got this score that's being updated every time we run over. We will run over when we overlap one of our tacos. But really, what the taco just is it's this actor, and when it has a tag, I think we called it food, and then on the the player, the BP player character, we're looking for overlap events where the tag is equal to food, and then if so, we're casting to our player state. Let's do PS, and then we're saying, okay, plus that score variable here, and then we take the score variable out of the player state and we update this to now be 1 or 2 or 3, whatever it is. So we're incrementing the score value, and that's what we're doing. And so what I want to do in this video is I want to add another over here to the right. I want to give the player some indication of their health. And rather than do this, have like health 100, and then every time they're hit by an enemy, it's like 90. That's not as intuitive to me, and it's too easy. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to have the player have these hearts, and then every time they're hit by an enemy or some environmental damage happens, then they lose 1. And then when they lose all 3 of them, or however many of them are stored inside the player state here, it's it's probably not good for them anymore. Right, so that's what our goal is, and let's kind of get started. I mean, we have a couple things that we're going to want to do right off the bat. We know that we're using our player state to store all those variables. So right now we only have one, and it's player score. So go ahead and add another one called player health, and that should be a variable type integer. Right? So, and when we compile that, we want to make the default value something that's not 0. So I'm going to choose 3. You can choose whatever you want as long as it's realistic. I'll choose 3, and then let's go ahead and save this just so we're done. Okay, and that's good for that. And then let's go back to our interfaces and go to our heads up display, and look at that. It's so nice. So right now, the way that we have this laid out in the hierarchy is we have this border, and that's the black part here, and then we've got our horizontal box that will expand from left to right as we add things, and right now we just had score, and then we have this text value, and that's the text value here. It's not 0, it's actually this function called getScore. And so what I'd like us to do over here on the right is have something similar that's health, and then however many of those. And in fact, I don't even think we need to say the word health. We can add some placeholder text there so we know how it's going to look, but I think showing the hearts is like a universal sign for health. Hopefully. We'll see. And so to do that, let's go ahead and add another horizontal box here so that we can right justify it. So take a horizontal box and then just have it here, like under the, let's go here. Can we go under this one? I think we can. So the borders can only have one child, but that's okay. Because horizontal box, we can actually have it go, yeah, we can fill it over to the right here. So what I did with this horizontal box is I selected it, and I have it horizontally aligning to the right, and I'm choosing to fill that. And we'll add some text, and that's the text. Text is what we're going to have the hearts appear in, right, I think. So we add that beneath it. Text block, this is looking good. I'm going to align it to center and center there. And yeah, see, this is why we want to fill it, because otherwise it will just end up over there. So we fill this, and instead of saying text block, I want to know how this is going to look. So let me see if I can go to do a little bit of Googling here. Heart emoji. Heart emoticon. Red heart emoji. You see, I've been here before. Emojipedia. Classic love heart emoji. Okay, this is what I want. I want this. I want the heart emoji. You saw I was about to try to dock it to Unreal Engine. Okay, so now that I have that, why do I want that? Because in the text box, instead of saying text block, I'm just going to try to copy paste it. And I did. I definitely did it. And I'm going to put 3 of them in here so I can see how they're going to look. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then we'll add a little bit of padding here. Minimum desired width? No, that's not what we want. I mean, I want padding between the characters themselves. Font. Minimum desired width. Wrap text. If I don't find this immediately, I'm going to just forget about it. I think if I do padding right, we should definitely add some padding here anyway so that it's not wild. Oh, right. Okay, fine. I definitely want my font larger, so maybe 40. Okay, and color. Yeah, what am I going to choose? Red. Red? Pink? Fine. Okay. You can choose whatever color you want. Okay, save that. Go to Sandbox, press play. Check it out. 3 hearts. Neat. Okay. So we like this, but now what do we do to make it more? This number of hearts, 3 hearts, needs to equal whatever the value is in the player state. So that's going to be a little more complicated, but we at least know where to start because we did this with our score here. You know what I'm going to do? I like this color so much that I'm going to show you a little trick. So if we have this selected, we open up under Appearance, Color and Opacity. We can actually take this color and drag and drop it into this drag and drop colors here to save. And then that'll become like a saved color in our theme manager. So as we're trying to figure out what colors are, we can come here and we can pick that, and now our colors are the same. Yes, I like this. Okay, back on track. So if we go to text, we want to bind. So we don't want to bind it to get score. We want to create a new binding, and that new binding is not get text underscore 1. It's going to be, rename this get health. Okay, and then right. So between calling this function and then returning our health, we've got to do some work. And what is our work that we want to do? So the first thing we want to get is we want to get to our player state. And so the way we get to our player state, if you recall it, we can go to get player controller. And then from the player controller, we have the player state. Player state. Okay, and then from the player state, we now have the player health. No, we don't, because I remember what we need to do. We need to cast to BP player state. Yeah, as the player state. Okay, so this is what we kind of need to do because the player state is still being governed by the default one. And the default one has these variables that we can't change in blueprints. You could if you were wanting to program some C++. It would be very easy to add it there, and then you would never have to do this. You could just directly grab off this. But we have to. So now that we do, and we've done it, we now are, as this player state, we now have access to that variable that we created called player health, right? So we can get the player health. Great. And so if we just do this, convert integer to text, and we set this, and we go here, and we press play, it just says 3, right? Which is not what we want. We want 3 hearts. We don't want 3, the number 3. So again, boo-how. We need a way to set, okay, I think I know how we can do this. We need another variable. So if we go in our local variables here, and this variable can be, let's see, well, let's call it hearts, because it's hearts. So what we're going to do with this variable is it's going to be, instead of a variable type Boolean, it's going to be a string. And it's going to be a string that we're going to append hearts to, depending on how many, what the value of the health variable in the player state. And so that's fine. So let's start with this. So I definitely know we want to get this. So we get this value of health, a heart, sorry, and we want to figure out how long it is. So that's called length, so len. So in the beginning, it's nothing, right? And well, in the beginning, it better be nothing. So we can set it here to nothing. All right. So now it's going to be nothing, because this is going to run many times. Like click, click, click. It's going to run all the time. So we definitely want to be making sure that we set it to no hearts every time it runs, and then we're going to feed those in. And how are we going to feed them in? So whenever you have more than one of a thing, you definitely know you need something called control flow, and this is going to be a for loop. So we've done a lot of for each loops, those except an array. And we don't have an array. Player health is not an array. Player health is a single integer. So for that, we need just the classic for loop. Execute the loop body for each index from start to stop, inclusive. And so for loop. And what we want to do from for loop, oh cool. So player health is a number, right? So if it's 5, and we do something from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If it's 3, 1, 2, 3, so this can be the last index that we run this, and this for loop is going to run however many times from whatever the first index is to the last index. And then from there, we don't want to, sorry. We definitely want to make sure that we set this variable to nothing when we start, and then when we're done with this, or as we run through it, we're going to want to set our hearts to set our hearts to the proper number of hearts, and that's going to need to get fed in here somehow, some way. So if we can then, what should our first index be? Oh, right. So every time we run through this, if hearts is nothing, then we would go, that is our first index. But we don't want it to be 0, because we'll get too many hearts. We actually need to add 1 to this. And that's going to be our first index, right? So the first index in this case would not be 0, it would be 1. And this way we're running through it the correct amount of times. And so what do we set hearts to? So now what we have is we have our for loop, and it's going to run the number of times. The first time we do it, it's going to run the length of the string, which is 0 plus 1. So it's going to run 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. It's going to stop at player health. So I kind of know that's going to work. The next thing we want to do is use a function on a string called, this is why we chose string, append. Concatenates 2 strings together to make a new string. What's in here? Well, what's in there is, I'm just going to take my emoji, my heart emoji from there. What is in there, back to our graph, is a heart. And then we can, that becomes our new value for hearts. And since it's append, it's not going to delete this variable every time we go in. It's just going to append a heart to that, and it's going to do that player health times. Okay. And then the last thing we need to do is then output, sorry about that, output the return value. And the return value is, well, it's just hearts, and then it will need to convert it to text, which is fine. All right, so take the string into text. And the reason I think we make hearts a string and not text is I'm not sure there's a text value that's append. Yeah, see, we don't have that available to us in text. So I was trying to drag off this. Let me test this, and then if it works, I'll come back and I'll describe how it's working. So when we play, yes, cool. We get these 3 hearts, and if we go to our player state and we change the value of player health to like 10, because we're super powered, and we compile that, we should get 10 hearts. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so we get 10 hearts. That's working. So it might seem like a lot of work, but that's what I want. I wanted hearts. I don't want a number. I want an emoji. And maybe we go to tacos, since it is a taco themed game. Maybe instead of hearts, it's going to just be tacos instead. This doesn't matter. We kind of know that it works, but just for the sake of being... No, it doesn't work. They don't have it. Okay. That's fine. We'll be fine with hearts. I think I just crashed. Hopefully did not. Sometimes this happens. That's why you save. Oh, it didn't crash. We're back. Okay. I got very lucky. So again, I'm going to save just so that I don't lose all this. Okay, so let me walk you through how this works, because it works. So what we're doing is here on the widget, we created this new function that's going to set, it's bound to the text field here. It's called get health. And then how that function works here is we are getting our player state and we're casting to the player state blueprint that we created, just because we need to get access to a new variable called player health. So once we do that, we make sure that we're setting the local value variable here that we created called hearts, which is a string, to nothing. And then we go ahead and we run a for loop. And that for loop takes as the first index, it takes the length of our hearts variable, which the first time around is 0, and it adds 1 to that. And then it runs through this loop. That's kind of the initial criteria for the loop. It runs through that loop player health number of times. And each time it runs the loop, it's going to set this local variable of hearts. It appends text that's that heart emoji that we have in here, and it's going to append that however many times it runs through the loop. In our case, it was 3 times. So you get 3 hearts, and it sets that. And then when this loop is finally completed, that's the return node. And the return node is simply just taking our final value of hearts and it's returning that into text. And we get this function where, well, I had set mine to 10, and so there's that many hearts there. So that's I think great for this video. Shows you a different way of kind of setting these text values, and kind of one that's a little more fun, I think. But again, it's also like we didn't have to go and create like icons and graphics for hearts. We could just use like an emoji, and it still actually functions pretty well. Okay, thanks.